A very good morning to you, Nigeria. So, after nearly 3 decades, the Nigerian government has finally decided that Ken Saro-Wiwa and the Ogoni 8 deserve what they were brutally denied in 1995, dignity. Yes, President Bola Ahmed Tinubu has granted them a posthumous pardon and, wait for it, national honors. Look who suddenly and finally found their conscience under a pile of paperwork at the villa. So, as always, let's rewind a bit, shall we? In November of 1995, 9 Ogoni activists were hanged under the military regime of Sani Abacha for daring, yes, daring, to speak up against the environmental genocide in the Niger Delta. And their crime was demanding that Shell and the Nigerian state stop treating their homeland like a disposable napkin soaked in crude oil. They were not criminals, by the way. They were citizens with a conscience. They were not activists. They were truth tellers. And the Nigerian state, in all its unchecked arrogance, executed them after what they described at best as a kangaroo trial presided over by a drunken gavel of impunity. Ken Saro-Wiwa, the environmentalist, writer, and one-man moral megaphone of the 90s, told the tribunal before his execution, and I'm going to quote directly, "I am not worried about the outcome of this trial. I am confident that the people of Nigeria and the international community will vindicate us." Well, it took 29 years, but vindication, or at least a half-hearted bureaucratic version of it, has finally arrived. Now, let's not be completely ungrateful. President Tinubu, thank you. Sincerely, this symbolic gesture matters, to be fair. The state has finally accepted or admitted, without explicitly saying so, that it got it horribly wrong. And you've done what none of your predecessors had the moral compass or courage to do. Not Obasanjo, not Yar'Adua, not Jonathan, and not even Buhari, who practically worked in a military cabinet that looked the other way. But here's the thing. Pardons are not pipelines. Honors are not hospitals. And posthumous medals don't clean up spilled oil. This pardon is not backed by real, tangible justice for the Ogoni people. The people who still drink polluted water, by the way, who breathe poisoned air, and who farm on infertile land that is caused by the oil spill, then all we've done here is put a national honor on a gravestone called progress. You just put it on there and called it progress. The Ogoni 9 died so their people could live better. So ask yourself, dear government, have their people lived better in this last 3 decades, or are they just dying slower? Where is the cleanup of Ogoni that the UNEP report demanded back in 2011? Why do multinational oil companies still operate with impunity in the Delta? Why are communities still protesting, bleeding, and begging for the basic rights to live on the land that gave this country its wealth, their ancestral home? Let this not be another performative act in the theater of Nigerian politics, where apologies are spoken in English, but justice is never translated in action. So yes, we clap for the gesture, and we acknowledge this long overdue act of redemption. But we ask, in fact, we demand, that it does not end here. Let the labor of Saro-Wiwa and his comrades not be in vain. Let their voices echo, not as martyrs alone, but as messengers of an unfinished mission at this point. And let their story remind every Nigerian leader, present and future, that history always remembers who pulled the lever and who stood against it. And yes, honor them, but more importantly, honor what they died for. Thank you, sir. And on that note, ladies and gentlemen, please join me as I welcome my incomparable co-host, Mazino Appeal. Mazino, good morning to you.
Morning, everybody. Welcome. Sunday edition, stellar one there once again. And I never thought about it like that. The president and the fact that these people are dying slower now. I like.
Oh, yes, indeed. They are dying slower now, indeed. Well, so I don't hear from me instead. I want to leave here with something. Here are the words of Ken Saro-Wiwa, writer, activist, environmentalist, and of course, the commander of the Niger.
Whatsoever that I or Mossad would ever have planned any such action. And I will forever disavow it, no matter what any forum decides upon. I appeal to you, my Lord, for only one thing. The Ogoni people have suffered tremendously in this country. They have made tremendous contribution to this country. The Niger Delta itself is in serious trouble. We need every assistance that we can get.
Well, good morning once again, and welcome to your Sunday Fix for news, insight, and compelling conversation. This is Breakfast Extra, and we're bringing you stories that matter from across Nigeria, Africa, and of course beyond. Now, here's what's coming up on today's program. First, we zoom into the heart of Abuja, where survivors of the one-chance robbery scourge are sharing harrowing tales. We'll hear from our correspondent who's been following the story and a security expert who breaks down what's going wrong with urban policing. Then we head to Kano State, where the cancellation of the annual Durbar festival has left cultural, economic, and political ripples. We speak to a top government official about the revenue loss and what it means for grassroots development. Also on the international front, tensions are rising in the Middle East, with the Iran-Israel conflict intensifying. But what does this mean for Nigeria's economy, security, and diplomacy? We ask security expert McHarry from SBM Intelligence. So join us then. Back home in Delta State, 7 children have been confirmed missing, far fewer than initially claimed. And we've got an exclusive field report and a live check-in with our correspondent for updates. Plus, we shine the spotlight on International Albinism Awareness Day, exploring what inclusion looks like in healthcare, media, and everyday life. We'll be joined by a consultant, dermatologist, and a broadcast journalist who's living boldly with albinism. As a full table of tough conversations, some of them fun, big ideas, stories of strength. So grab your tea, just don't spill it, that's our job. Settle in and let's get started. This is your Weekend Breakfast Extra.
Oh, yes, indeed. Let's get started with our big story, or rather our best report for today. We begin with a chilling reality that haunts the streets of Nigeria's capital. One chance, as was called, is a seemingly innocent taxi ride turns into a terrifying encounter with criminals disguised as drivers and passengers. The victims, mostly women, are robbed, assaulted, and sometimes left with lifelong scars, both physical and psychologically. Even more disturbing are the whispers now becoming louder that some law enforcement officers may be complicit or simply indifferent. In this special report filed by News Central's Aishat Salihu, we hear directly from survivors who bravely share their stories from the authorities charged with protecting lives and properties in the FCT. Let's take a look.
Abuja, the Federal Capital Territory, known for its order and structure, is reportedly now the hotspot of several notorious criminal syndicates that have left residents afraid to take public transportation. These criminals, called one-chance operators, pose as cab drivers, preying on unsuspecting passengers, often at night and in broad daylight, leaving their victims traumatized.
Immediately I entered the car. They wind up and told me, "We are kidnappers." He was beating me just at the backside of my rib, like from my neck parts all the way down to my waist.
Nwamaka, her first name for confidentiality purposes, is still visibly shaken and is yet to step out of her home since the incident. She is part of unavailable statistics of underreported cases. Grace, also her first name, is another victim who is still worried over the burden of repaying the huge sum of money borrowed from the bank loan application on her mobile device during the incident. She believes the very officers meant to protect residents may be colluding with the criminals.
Your PIN. And when he said your PIN, I knew, hey, wahala, don't come. And he cleared all the money in the whole account. And this car was getting to checking points where there are police, because I was hearing the officer and they say, carry on. But when they get to checking point, one of them will come and say, go settle down, go settle down. Just be hearing them. We have a station here. And when I got there, the police were like, madam, they were so reluctant about the case, maybe because they were not going to get money from it. I don't know.
The FCT Police Command admits over the years the menace of one-chance operators in the FCT was alarming. But with strategies put in place, there has been reduction of incidents of one-chance operations in the FCT.
There is no police officer that will be inhuman to extort a victim of one chance. I disagree with that allegation that our policemen the stop and search were not searching properly. We became very aggressive with the stop and search during the period of this one chance menace.
As allegations of collusion and corruption within the police at stop and search checkpoints have been denied, security experts maintain a change in strategy is urgently needed and call on residents to be more vigilant.
There are people that you can be able to use to capture and to handle or to monitor these criminal groups. For instance, if you are a bus stop, Berger is a major bus stop, the central bus stop in Abuja, and you have the National Union being mandated that if there's any issue of one chance within this environment, people will be held responsible. You realize that there will always be a check and balance.
Register all the vehicles in the FCT. You must install monitors. That is to have cameras that will have an advanced knowledge and supervision and overview of the movement.
The trauma does not end with the theft and abduction. Experts say many victims suffer lasting psychological damage.
PSD, post-traumatic stress disorder, puts you on the edge, put anxiety in you, puts stress in you, and makes you feel uncomfortable each time you remember what has happened.
While experts say that one-chance robbery may be on the increase, they add that many of the cases remain unreported. The FCT Police Command is, however, urging victims and the public to share information on suspected one-chance syndicate activities or police misconduct with the Police Complaints Response Unit to help tackle this crime. Citizens are also urged to avoid taking laws into their hands.
By addressing the root causes, enhancing public awareness, and ensuring accountability within the police force and residents alike, Abuja can work fully towards reclaiming its safety and security. In the Federal Capital Territory, Abuja, for News Central, Aishat, Salihu.
Disturbing videos there, but then again, these are conversations that must be had. Now, let's introduce our guests, one of which you've seen already. Aishat Salihu, News Central correspondent, is going to be joining us for this conversation. Good morning, Aishat. Also joining us via video will be Dr. Yahuza Getso, security intelligence professional with years of experience in criminal surveillance and public safety reform. You're welcome, sir. Thank you very much for joining us. First off, Aishat, let's come.
Good morning.
Thank you. Aishat, let's come to you. Let's ask about gathering this report. I wanted to know what one of the most disturbing facts you might have found out was during the process.
Thank you so much, Mazina. Thank you, Judith, for having me this morning. I'd say one of the most disturbing facts I've come to find out that actually informed this report would be the underreportedness of one-chance operations, especially by victims, those who have been involved by this particular incident. A lot of people, a lot of women, I'd like to say, most of them who go through these experiences, they don't really want to come out to talk about it. And part of the reasons are they are still battling the psychological trauma that has come to follow this incident. And also another thing would be be that there is a little bit of mistrust within the police system, because some of them did mention that they feel when they just come out to say to the police, it's as if these matters are not taken really seriously, so they would rather just stay at home. Some of them are still nursing the injuries they sustained from these attacks. That's those who got brutalized, or even some even end up being maimed. I mean, their families are there, and they'll just be like, okay, stay back. Let us try to help nurse your injury, help you bring you back to the right psychological state before you can even go out there to relate with people. So these are the issues. Most people wouldn't want to speak with you. So it was really particular for me to take on this report, because I had two victims who were willing to come forth. I mean, brave enough. That's after months this incident happened, and then they spoke to me and talked about their own experiences, the psychological trauma they've had to deal with, and the social anxiety that they are having.
I also have to ask about, the other side of this story, and that's the side of the security. Were you able to speak to any authority, security agencies or authority? Because there are always allegations of complicity on their part.
Right, of course, I did. That's also another thing that stood out for me, because I remember when I spoke with the victims, so most of them, but some of them, both of them were alluding that, okay, the first one said that she didn't want to talk about it, while the other one said she proceeded the next day, because after she was dropped off at night, she proceeded the next day to go file a complaint, because she realized some transactions have happened in her mobile device, and this is a crime that has just been committed, so she felt the need to go approach the police and speak about it. But when she got to the police station that was close to her area, she realized that they were not taking the matter seriously. They were even asking her to pay money to get the first cap sheet to document her story, or even to get a pen. And they just kept on telling her that she needed to put in money to pursue the case. And she was like, she's just been robbed. Her account has just been emptied. How is she going to pay money to do this? But she realized there was this back and forth with the whole procedure, and she left it alone. So these allegations, I tried hearing from the FCT Police Command, the PPRO, the Police Public Relations Officer, Josephine Ade, and she mentioned that these allegations are false. They are not true, and no police officer would extort from a one-chance victim. And then she also said that at the stop and search, because one of the victims also said that at the stop and search checkpoints, they weren't checking properly. That was why the criminals were able to move on without being detected. At some point, she even said she was hearing as the criminals went out to sort allegations to sort the police, and then, the police just said, carry on. They didn't bother checking. But then the FCT Police Command, PPRO, also said this allegation is false. She said that the men at the stop and search checkpoints are very diligent with the discharge of their duties, and nothing like this ever happened. And if at all it happened, she's saying she's encouraging victims to come out and, speak to the police complaints response unit, where she's heading.
That's very disturbing, that part there about the checkpoint. Didn't think that would be a challenge. But thank you very much, Aishat, for that report and also your contribution there. But let's turn to Dr. Getso. Dr. Getso, you're a security expert. Now, this is a modus operandi that we all know all too well. Especially here in Lagos, it's something that we've experienced since the 80s, the 90s, through the early noughties, and even up until now. Here in Abuja, it's become a very rampant thing that happens almost every week, every weekend, and people still fall for it. So I'm wondering exactly why is it that this method seems to continue to thrive in places, especially Abuja?
Well, it is very clear that there are 7 outline reasons and facts that remain unarguable. 1, the extortion by the police at the so-called stop and search is still ongoing, and it hasn't been managed by the police authority or any other authority responsible. And that is 1. Secondly, I'm not blaming the PPRO in trying to protect her own office or in trying to protect her own profession by saying that those allegations are just mere lies. But absolutely, I want the PPRO of the FCT to go back and dress a mufti and move around with her vehicle and find a way of working in disguise so that she can understand really that there is nothing called stop and search in the FCT. And even stop and on your light, inner light, it just happens between 7 p.m. Probably to 12:30 a.m., sometimes to 1 a.m. At any time from then, you cannot find anybody. And in the early hours, time when most of this one-chance activity used to take place, you hardly find police stop and search. You hardly even find police vehicles and vans moving around. So, 2. And then number 3, total absence of any monitoring and monitoring system, effective monitoring system in the FCT as far as the civil engagement and the transportation is concerned. Total absence. I say total absence, and I mean my word, and I can repeat my word, and I stand by it. And number 4, yes, of course, we have been making a clarion call, and we have been pleading, we have been advocating for the need necessary for the FCT administration and the federal government in Nigeria to register all commercial vehicles and have them monitors, and even introduce a trackers to all the official vehicles, and anybody who is found wanting of removing that tracker, which will have a central monitor at the probably Force Intelligence or DSS office in the FCT, or any other special intelligence corner where the central monitor will be fixed. So anybody who wants to use his vehicle, either painted as a taxi, either a private vehicle, but he wants to use it for that purpose, must have it registered and must have that tracker installed on his vehicle. And the central monitor of that tracker should be somewhere at the corner at the Force Intelligence, or somewhere within the collaborated intelligence formation or under the FCT Security Administration, and so on and so forth.
Dr. Getso.
And number 5.
Okay.
Yes, of course, the sensitization is not really adequate in terms of informing people on how to go about those things. And number 6, the public themselves, we, the citizens of the FCT, are not really helping matters too. Because once we come out to join a vehicle, there are vehicles that you can seemingly understand, you can have concern and question. So those vehicles, you need to be careful, because it is not only the security operative that's supposed to do the job.
I mean, Doctor,
you are the first security of yourself. So people must learn to be vigilant themselves, and people must understand those predicaments, and also utilize the messages being shared by some of us, the experts, and the police authorities and other security agencies. And finally, government have never taken it serious. The issue of one chance is something that can be managed, is something that can be tracked, is something that can be dealt with, and we should have a social security registration in the FCT if we cannot have it everywhere. And most especially, checking there must be a checking system on the National Union of Road Transport Workers and all other who are participating in the Transport Authority in the FCT.
Doctor, I want to believe that there is such, whether those cars are registered or not. But one thing I took away from your submission, all 5 points that you raised, was that there are systemic failures, whether in the transportation sector itself, or whether it's intelligence gathering or following through in terms of investigations and finding the culprits of these crimes that are being committed. And I think that's why the gaps are, because of the systemic gaps or the lack of initiative. Because based on one of the victims of the one chance in that report, where she recounted her experience, she said that they asked for a PIN number and there was a transfer that was made. So clearly you could go to a bank, raise complaints and say, look, this has happened. And then the bank would give you, steps that you could follow. And so it begs to ask a question about this part at this point in terms of collusion. There have been accusations about police collusion with these culprits and safeguarding, which is now, we're now seeing the shortfalls. Is there some truth to these collusion allegations?
Well, I think it is very clear because we cannot deny the fact that within the police authority and all the security agencies, there are unscrupulous elements. And efforts need to be made by the police authority and all other relevant authority to intensify intelligence, intensify monitoring, to ensure that some of those culprits are fished out and dealt with accordingly, and allow them to face the wrath of the law, and at the same time, deal with them to serve as a deterrence for others. The issue of colluding, the issue of connivance, the issue of collaboration and collaboration between the police force, members of the police force, as well as the other security agencies is known to everybody. It's not something that we can deny. But we cannot say that all the police are unscrupulous. But there are unscrupulous elements because of the issues around recruitment, because of many other issues of corruption, extortion, and other things, because of issues even of lack of ability to provide social welfare for them, and even the issues of promotion, recruitment, and other things. So definitely, there is this, those who pass these allegations must have an evidence, must have facts. There are people are not just talking. It is not only in regards to one chance that people are alleging that police are conniving, some of the police are conniving, some of the police are colluding in many issues. We have so many evidences. I think the PPRO need to go back and seek redress. I commend you for making an effort in order to kind of protect your profession and order also to promote the police, the Nigerian Police Authority. But you have, the fact remains there and remains valid that there are a lot of unscrupulous elements among you.
Thank you, Dr. Getso.
And you know, we know, and you know that the public know.
All right, then. Thank you, Dr. Getso. Let me come back to Aisha. Aisha, you gathered the experience of multiple people there, and I'm wondering whether there's a common thread that runs through the experience. Is there a common thread when it comes to the modus operandi of these individuals who perpetrate this act? Is there something people can look out for just to serve as a sign, perhaps, for their security next time that they might be in this kind of a situation? What did you discover?
Victims do not take cabs at designated parks, and that is one issue because the NURTW, I know Dr. Yahuza gets stated the role of NURTW. They also always say, I mean, the FCT police command has also said it, that people, residents, should ensure that they take vehicles at designated parks. I mean, ensure that where you're taking your vehicle is a bus stop that is known, where these officials and all that. But then we can't take away the fact that, like, okay, let us just take vehicles at this particular junction where we're seeing other people taking these vehicles, and these particular vehicles are going our way. That is it on the part of residents, and they are unsuspecting, and they don't even know that they may be putting themselves at arm's way in that regard. And then another thing that I even want to talk about is the psychological effect that has come to stay, the fear, the apprehension. Most people that have gone through these, when they now want to take a cab, they now want to step out. That's if when eventually they want to step out, there is this fear. You know, they're wondering, am I about taking another vehicle that I may be brutalized and may be harmed, or what's going to happen to me? Am I actually safe? So some of them, the first victim did say that she lost her job in the process because months after the incident, she stopped going to work because she was scared of stepping out of her home, and she's still at home till now. She has not even had the courage to go out. So there is this need for, she's been just banking on her family support and all of that. And then the clinical psychologist mentioned that there has to be that support for victims, and victims have to come out to speak up. They need to come out to speak up, because if you don't speak up, you account for the unavailable statistics of underreported cases. And perhaps, I guess that is why the police authorities are now saying that the incidence of one-chance operations has reduced in the FCT.
Dr. Getso, what responsibilities do financial institutions owe to their customers who might have gone through such an experience? Because we all know that the target of these thieves is actually always the apps inside of people's phones. And as we heard from the report there, one of them told that she was asked for a PIN immediately, and she knew what that meant. So what recourse could they have as victims, and what responsibility do the banks owe these victims?
Well, there are 4 responsibilities. One, to fast track and ensure that, yes, it happens. 2, to kind of reinvigorate another strategy for which they can protect their customers against those hurdles, against such audits. And then number 3, to ensure that whosoever is found wanting or had a commitment in finding himself, the bank should be able to assist the intelligence and the security during the course of investigation to ensure that, because you cannot remove money and put it in your pocket. It must be moved from one place to the other before you have access to it. And bank can easily be able to have a system, a monitoring system that can be able to fast track who are really the connivers or who are really the one chance guys, because they must move money from one bank to another before they are able to take it into their pocket or into their bank accounts. And then number 4, to also find a way of introducing an insurance, whereby probably will help those who found themselves, who may find themselves as victims of this one chance and any other financial fraud, so that they can be able to be supported by the bank through that insurance. I could remember just about 3 days ago, a friend of mine was frauded over 16 million naira using the same procedure, not really one chance. They met him in his house. It was a kind of daylight kind of robbery, which I'm sensitizing and advocating for people to be careful. Just people knock at his door, just within FCT here, and he asked, who is that? He had the voice of someone he knew. He opened the door, immediately they came in. They used gun to ask him to go in. And on getting in, all they asked is, where are your phone? They sat at their comfort zone and continued to transfer his money up to 16 million naira. Of course, we are working on it, and I know authorities are working on it, but there are these chances. People need to warn their wives and children and even themselves, and be cautioned by themselves also for allowing anybody who knock at your door, you just open it. To be very, very careful.
Well, I mean, I must say thank you both for just taking out the time to join us. Aishat, many thanks for bringing us this report and bringing this to the fore. We appreciate all of your hard work. Aishat Salihu, our correspondent live from Abuja, and also to you, Dr. Yahuza Gatsu, security intelligence expert who joined us as well on the program. Once again, many thanks. Let's go on a short break, shall we? Let's go on a short break. When we return, we head away from the capital and off to Kano State. After the break, stay with us.
Welcome again. Now in Kano State, what was once a colorful and deeply symbolic cultural celebration has been silenced, and with it, the heartbeat of a thriving tourist economy. The annual Hawan Salah Durbar, a grand post-Eid celebration that draws thousands of spectators, royal cavalcades, and tourists from around the world, was cancelled this year, triggering concerns not just about cultural erosion, but economic fallout. According to the Kano State government, the cancellation has led to extensive revenue loss, discouraged both local and foreign investors, and disrupted grassroots development efforts. Our News Central's Emmanuel Bagudu was in Kano to speak with key stakeholders. Let's take a look at this report.
The look on their faces tells it all. No one here seems to be happy with the decision of the federal government to continuously cancel the most revered Salah ceremony in Kano, the annual Salah Durbar. A tradition spanning over a century now is gradually at the brink of extinction. The popular Durbar, known by residents as Hawandoshe, is an event that have gained the status of the UNESCO cultural heritage, but has not been taking place for the last 2 years, following cancellation by the federal government over reasons of insecurity.
These annual festivities became...
The Kano State government has raised a burning concern, saying that the Asian city is being denied the opportunity to host international tourists and investors who throng the state to witness the annual event, a situation the federal government should have considered.
When these tourists come from all over the world, go to our popular market, the Kasuan Kurmi, where these things are sold, and sometimes they go to Central Hotel where these artifacts are displayed. They make a choice and buy. When Prince Edward came to Nigeria to represent his mother then, was taken to Kano and was treated to this august Durbar that happens every year. And he was so perplexed, he was so happy that he kept on referring to the Kano Durbar.
While the federal government through security agencies have consistently cited intelligence report of a possible hijacking of the carnival by hoodlums, the Kano State government is not convinced, as it claims the action is significantly affecting a loss in the state revenue accrued during the ceremony.
Well, if you know how budgets are made, you project what you are going to earn internally as internally generated revenue, called IGR. And also you take account of what you get from the Federation account. Since the federal government decided to deny us these revenues that come in, we were trying to start to beg the federal government to start thinking on how to compensate us by giving us some reparations.
The Commissioner for Local Government and Chieftaincy Affairs, Tajo Othman, says that there is an urgent need for intervention of the President to end this action.
We have 44 local governments, and if on the average Mr. President can be gracious enough to augment each local government to say about 5 billion, that will go a long way.
Many residents of the state will be hoping that these requests will be looked into, as President Bola Tinubu has pledged to provide all citizens with the dividends of democracy. In Kano for News Central, Emmanuel Bagudu.
A very interesting instance here regarding the commerce there in Kano as it regards to Durbar and the cancellation or what it's caused. But let's take a short break, and when we come back, we'll be introducing our guests, of whom we'll be having this very interesting conversation with.
And you're welcome back. And we continue with our second big report for today. We head to Kano as our correspondent, Emmanuel Bagudu, joins us live, who filed that report earlier as the state government in Kano frowns at the cancellation of the Durbar to celebrate the Salah or the Eid celebration. Also joining us is Malami Ibrahim. He is the president or the director of the state's National Guild, Actors Guild Association. They both join us live virtually. Well, Emmanuel, first of all, thank you so much for joining us. I appreciate you for coming on, and also to you, Mr. Malami Ibrahim. Let me start with you, Emmanuel. You've covered Durbars in the past. How different was the atmosphere in Kano this year without the festival? Second year in a row.
Yeah, actually, this is different. 2 years without Durbar is boring for the people of Kano. And I feel that, of course, it's a deliberate attempt to, send their tradition into extinction. So it's a feeling of sadness, it's a feeling of melancholy, it's a feeling of nostalgia. Of course, that lovely tradition that used to bring visitors across the world, that lovely tradition, that lovely activity that used to bring investors, giving them jobs, businesses flourishing as a result of, the Durbar. that is not happening. So it's something new, it's something strange to them, and they're not really finding it funny at all. Yeah.
Now, the Commissioner for Local and Government emphasized the significant losses. Can you give us an idea of what sectors are losing second year in a row without this Durbar being celebrated? Emmanuel.
Yes, the commissioner is actually okay. The commissioner is actually bringing out, really now the impact of the cancellation of the Durbar, and he made mention of the fact that their budget is tied into internally generated revenue. Part of the budget of the state is being funded by the internally generated revenue from the state, and this internally generated revenue is actually most of it is gotten from the activities of this Durbar, which happens actually 5 different occasions in the year, during the Eid al-Fitr and during the Eid al-Kabir. Different emirs troop out, and of course the paramount emir, which is the emir of Kano, actually is the attraction of the whole world, where they come in, people come in on mass from different countries. He made mention of Prince Edward of England, who once visited Kano, and of course has placed Kano in the international pedestal because of that Durbar. So it's a lot of money being lost. And in terms of figures, he quoted the fact that a good chunk of the funding of the budget comes from activities of the Durbar, which a huge amount of money. He made it clear that at least each local government currently will require at least out of the compassion of Mr. President, each local government will require at least 5 billion naira to actually resuscitate based on the money being lost from the internally generated revenue. So it's a huge loss as far as they're concerned, because they have to look for another way of generating money, because Durbar has been cancelled for 2 years, and it's something that the federal government has to compensate them in terms of reparations. That is what the commissioner said in clear terms. Yeah.
Thank you, Emmanuel. Mr. Ibrahim, let's come to you now. Mr. Ibrahim, there are 2 things here. We're talking about the commerce that this engages the people of Kano with, and also the profit that comes therein. However, there's also the cultural aspect of it, and it seems that there seems to be a cultural erosion currently, with the past 2 years it being cancelled. I also remember that there was a Durbar that was cancelled that had to do with the emirship, if I'm not mistaken. These are cultures that people have lived for aeons with, and all of a sudden we find ourselves one after the other simply taking one aspect out, next year another one out. These are for security concerns, is what we hear. But do you think that the authorities are not being perhaps too proactive when it comes to the issue of security? Could there be other alternatives, security options that could be taken so the Durbar could go on instead of outright cancellation? What are your thoughts?
But actually, the politicians are making it hard for Kano, especially those that leave Kano to national. They have interest, and because they're making it hard for Kano's people. This has been for almost 1,000 years. And nothing like endeavor without talks. The rules of this, that the endeavor without behavior for
unfortunately, there we seem to have problems with the network is pretty iffy. Emmanuel, let's come to you while we're waiting for Mr. Ibrahim to perhaps maybe rejoin us. Regarding the activities of the authorities, the security authorities, the policing, or whatever authorities are involved in creating security for the Durbar, do you think that there might be alternatives that could have been taken instead of outright cancellations? And I also heard Mr. Ibrahim say something about the politicizing of the event or the situation around it. What do you have to say to that?
Well, the truth of the matter is that the Emirate field has been responsible for this situation. I can say that categorically because I've been reporting the Emirate field for at least more than a year now, since May 2024. So, and we know the etymological, or rather the history or the roots of the Emirate crisis, the current Emirate crisis in Kano. So when you are bringing, when you hear people mention that politics has been responsible for this kind of confusion, then it's right. It's right to say that. Why did I say that? Is because, of course, we know we heard from the package I produced, the statement and the body language of the deputy governor and the Emir of Kano, Mohammed Sanusi II, is full of melancholy. Sanusi made it clear that he was ordained, was turbaned on the 8th of June 2014 as the 14th Emir of Kano, and he made it clear that during that time there are a lot of political upheavals that actually, made it very difficult for him to be on seat. Sanusi made it clear that time that there are people that were asked to actually even go and get a court order to swear that they didn't ordain him as a sitting as a 14th Emir of Kano. He made it clear on that video, speaking in Hausa, and then that is politics. That is politics. And then all of a sudden, also he was now removed, by the Ganduje administration, and then later reinstated by the administration of Abba Kabir Yusuf, and then of course the post emir did not give up. So these are the things that actually brought a lot of clashes. And what I would like to know, politics is there, and the main reason why Kano should be stabilized is when these politicians actually take full responsibility of the well-being and the welfare of their electorates, and make sure that people of Kano continue to enjoy peace in general. Everybody has to sacrifice, both from the subjects and both from the government and from the government. Everybody has to sacrifice to make sure that Kano don't lose revenues, development. You can see the passion of the sitting government. I'm not holding brief for them, but the passion is very clear. There shouldn't be any truncated activity. They should be able to given that level playing ground. Politicians must sacrifice to make sure that everything goes fine in Kano. Yeah.
Right. I mean, Emmanuel, you make a fair point there. The truth of the matter is that oftentimes, as the African adage we say, when the elephants fight, it's only the grass that suffers, or is the land that, I don't know, I can't complete it. But one thing is clear, it's the people of Kano that, that are feeling this when it comes to revenue into all of this. Ibrahim, if you are still with us, I'd like to just get your final thoughts on this, what your final parting words, at least just for 30 seconds or 1 minute, the way forward as we look forward to 2026, the Eid celebration. Unfortunately, we cannot hear Ibrahim there. Malami Ibrahim, unfortunately, we can't take your submission there because of your connectivity. But thank you once again, Emmanuel Bagudu, correspondent live from Kano. They're giving us that report following the cancellation, second year in a row, cancellation of the Durbar celebration in Kano State, and also to Mr. Malami Ibrahim, who's the director of the Actors Guild Association in Kano State. Let's go on a short break. When we return, we'll bring you the breakfast headlines. Stay with us. A very good morning to you. You're watching Breakfast Headlines here on News Central Television. I am Judith, the TV. And we begin with tragedy that struck in Yelewata town, Guma local government area of Benue State, where over 107 bodies have been recovered following a coordinated night assault by suspected armed assailants. Eyewitnesses say the attackers launched the raid under the cover of darkness, splitting into 3 groups to execute a well-coordinated attack on the community. Confirming the incident on Saturday, Benue State Police Public Relations Officer SP Udeme Edet said tactical units were swiftly deployed to the area and engaged the attackers in a gun battle. The attack is being described as one of the deadliest in recent times in a region already grappling with frequent outbreaks of violence. And off to Kogi State, where residents of Ayigule Igun Bunu in Oduakbe, Kaba Bunu local government area of Kogi State took to the streets on Saturday, protesting what they described as escalating insecurity in their community. The protesters, made up mostly of women and youth, say they can no longer access their farms as bandits have overrun the area. They decried the rising rate of abductions, which they say has left the community in fear. Chanting solidarity, songs, and carrying placards, the demonstrators vow to continue their protests until authorities take urgent steps to ensure the safety of lives and property in the area. And now to legislative matters. Senate spokesperson Yemi Adaramodu has warned that Nigeria's democracy could suffer if the National Assembly is made a part-time institution. Adaramodu responded to former INEC chairman Atahiru Jaga's call for a part-time legislature with reduced emoluments. He said if the parliament is on part-time, then democracy is on part-time, stressing that no democracy thrives by weakening its legislature. He argued that lawmakers do more than make laws, I beg your pardon. They also perform oversight and attend to extensive constituency needs. Adaramodu noted that parliamentarians often provide personal support to constituents and remain the most accessible arm of government. In the meantime, Southeast National Chairperson, that's the chairman of the vice chairman of the People's Democratic Party, Cheta Nwanze, says the party can no longer afford to keep losing ground in its traditional strongholds across the region. Speaking at a stakeholders meeting held in the PDP secretariat in Umuahia in Abia State capital, Nwanze called for greater unity and cooperation among party members. Also present at the meeting were Abia State PDP chairman Ahmed Abraham and his Imo State counterpart, Austin Nwachukwu, both of whom echoed similar concerns.
With this unity and what I'm seeing here today, I strongly believe soonest the game will change for it. So therefore, we will not allow people to come and snatch our belongings as we shall. Already map up a strategy to make sure we claim Abia State back to
Abia PDP have been fairly so. We met a lot of challenges. We are determined to take over power.
We are trying to make sure that PDP does not lose dive in the southeast. You know, from 1979, 1999 to date, southeast has remained the home of the People's Democratic Party. Even when we have governors in other political parties, you know how they came. If the PDP had put our foot down, they wouldn't have become governors. Because we were like sleeping and they took advantage of us and became governors in the southeast.
And off to Delta State, where the people of Ijala community have reaffirmed their Ijo origin and pledged unwavering allegiance to the rulership of the Agbara Matu Kingdom. At a press briefing held in Egbaga Town Hall, community leaders and residents firmly rejected claims suggesting any ancestral ties to the Ishekiri ethnic group, distancing themselves from the neighboring Ogurodo community. Now, speakers at the event emphasized Ijala's historical and cultural identity as Ijo and reiterated their commitment to preserving their heritage and loyalty to the Baramatu throne. News Center's Bella Festus has the details.
Ijala Jaloba is a riverine community in Delta Southwest local government area. Located near Baramatu Kingdom, the headquarters of the Ijo people in Delta State. Renowned for fishing and palm wine tapping, the community has long been subject to misconceptions due to the dominance of the Shekiri language in the area. But Ijala leaders are now speaking out to set the record straight.
Whatever I said about this Ijala today is being supported by Barry Bisu. And anybody that say what we said here is different is on his own. I'm a male child from onset, from Owejibri to Abuja, where Gogo, Elwahi, Eyego, Nawe, and myself. All the aforesaid, they are all male of Baramatu.
They say the age-old debate over their identity has caused prolonged tension, with various groups attempting to rewrite their history. Identifying Egbeha as their forebearer, the people of Ijala have reaffirmed their loyalty to the king of Baramatu Kingdom.
The general public, local government, federal government, and the international community should take note that Ijala, the Alauba community in Baramatu Kingdom, is an Ijaw community and is never and was never and will never be part of the Shekiri ethnic nationality. To our greater dismay, some of the descendants of Egbeha and Egogo still engage in alienating their paternal ancestral Baramatu land to their maternal Ugborodo community. We hereby pledge our loyalty and allegiances to His Royal Highness Oboro Baram II, the Pere of ancient Baramatu Kingdom.
Community leaders insist that those linking them to Shekiri heritage are outsiders with no authority to narrate their story.
This community was founded by Egbeha, an Ijaw man from Oporoza, a son of Owozibri, and so shall it be. Ikantu, Obodo. All these communities are closely knitted, including Oporoza. Even a Fro that was founded by Frowe and Arogbo and even Patani, the Kabowe Kingdom, have claim to Obodo and Amadino. I say it with every responsibility and conviction. And we are not ready. We will not relinquish this community for any stranger that wants to use all cunning means to take away this, our Godfather given land.
For the Ijala people, this public clarification marks an important step in reclaiming their identity and embracing their Ijaw roots in line with African cultural traditions. In Delta State for News Central, Biola Festus.
Nigeria's journey toward cleaner, sustainable transportation is gaining momentum. At a symbolic event at the Idu train station in Abuja, the presidential initiative on compressed natural gas handed over CNG-powered buses to the Nigeria Railway Corporation as part of the nation's energy transition initiative. This was also accompanied with the unveiling of a newly branded coach. News Central's correspondent Sumaya Abubakar reports.
At the Idu train station in Abuja, the partnership between the Nigerian Railway Corporation and the Presidential Initiative on Compressed Natural Gas was once again brought to the fore. Some CNG-powered buses were officially handed over to the NRC to enhance intermodal connectivity, linking rail services to city routes with cleaner energy.
Now, the multimodal system, they are going to provide a better customer experience for us, so that when people use a vehicle, they have a last mile to get to town. For Kubwa, it's close to town, but Idu is far. Now, when you go outside these two areas, Lagos, Aba, and the rest, the CNG buses will be able to provide cheaper mobility, extra money in people's pocket.
Also unveiled was a CNG-branded coach representing not just a cosmetic change, but a renewed commitment to greener alternatives in rail operations.
So we are cooperating first. Our initial cooperation, which we are launching immediately, is around informing Nigerians about the CNG revolution. And that starts with the branding of these coaches. That starts with the handing over of CNG buses for the operations of NRC. That starts with the enablement of conversion of NRC's own vehicles and eventually power requirements to CNG.
The handover and unveiling signals a bold move to commence a national rollout of greener alternatives in the transportation sector, with more collaborations expected between the PICNG and other transport agencies. With the delivery of the CNG buses and the branding of this coach, the NRC is not just transporting people, it is transporting the nation into a cheaper, cleaner and sustainable future. From the Idu train station in Abuja, reporting for News Central, Sumaya Abubakar.
Those are the major headlines we can take at this hour. Breakfast Extra continues. I'm Judith at TV. Thanks for watching.
More conversation here inside of Breakfast Extra. Tension in the Middle East have reached a dangerous new height as the Iran-Israeli conflict escalates, drawing global concerns and sparking fears of a wider regional war. Now, but while missiles are flying thousands of miles away, the tremors are already being felt here in Africa's largest economy. Rising oil prices, security shifts, geopolitical alliances. What exactly does this conflict mean for Nigeria? Could our fuel import costs spiral further? What's the risk to diaspora Nigerians in conflict-prone zones? And is this yet another blow to an already fragile global economic outlook?
So could our fuel imports costs spiral further? And what's the risk of diaspora Nigerians in conflict-prone zones, as well as is this yet another blow to an already fragile global economic outlook, like Mazina's rightly pointed out? Yeah, so to help us connect the dots, we are joined now by Kemisit Efionki, is a partner and head of research at SBM Intelligence, one of Nigeria's foremost geopolitical and economic analysis firms. As always, Kemisit, it's wonderful to have you join us. Let's just get started with the basics here. And let's give just, with a broad view, how serious is this current escalation between Iran and Israel? And how different is it from past floods that we've seen? I mean, we saw the rains of fire and brimstone in the sky, but
it's first, good morning, Mazino and Judy. Thank you for having me. It's difficult to say. Usually with conflicts in the Middle East, right? You run the risk of a wider regional contagion if expectations are not managed, and if either party, right, decides to stray out of sort of directly engaging with each other militarily towards, and you have a situation where the conflict escalates towards them targeting critical economic infrastructure, which is shared across a number of countries, right, within the region, many of whom are either allies of the United States or have reached some kind of accommodation with either Israel or Iran. So that's probably where the needle would move significantly, as we've seen with exchanges between both sides in the past, when the fears of them dramatically escalating was quite significant. They were able to pull back with some intervention from other international actors, right? This current engagement is the longest direct engagement that both sides have had historically to date. But what we're seeing in the Israeli-Iranian relationship, if you can call it a relationship, right, in that sense, is that with each subsequent engagement, the needle appears to be moving further and further down the path of escalation. And that's where the worry and that's where the concern is. Prior to 2023, 2024, right, both parties had only ever engaged with each other through proxies. Iran, perhaps most significantly through Hamas in the Gaza Strip, but also through Hezbollah in Lebanon, and a range of other groups that were operating in Syria, right, in the conflict situation that exists down there. And Israel had obviously carried out targeted assassination of key Iranian proxies, or the leaders of key Iranian proxy groups right across the region historically, right? So, but prior to last year, engagement, right, wasn't direct until Iran decided to respond to a series of Israeli assassinations of Iranian military and political officials itself by directly sending rockets and drones on Israeli targets within Israeli territory. And that was seen as one of the uncrossable red lines in international geopolitics. Obviously, that changed. Both parties were able to dial back, right, that very significant escalation of activities. But now that we've crossed that threshold and we're dealing with a second round of Israeli-Iranian engagements on a more direct plane, it's very hard to say where this sort of goes. Iran has said that it will not attack Israel if Israel stops attacking it. But Israel's Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu has said that this particular phase of the operation could continue for days. It will continue until it is satisfied that it has been able to effectively degrade Iran's capacity to, as it sees it, develop a nuclear weapon. And you have a host of observers and watchers who are saying that Israel is essentially doing this in order to derail those negotiations between Iran and the United States towards preventing the development of said nuclear weapons. Right, Israel thinks an agreement between Iran and the US is anathema to its interest for, some would say for good reason. So the current conflict is set within, somewhat deep history and a deep animosity between, both of these sides, which stretches back decades. So it's really unclear, right, where this particular phase of the conflict heads. It probably will continue for the next couple of days. At the very least, it will continue for well into this week. But apart from that, the possibility of attacking shipping within the region, which the Iranian foreign minister suggested a couple of hours ago, may be on the cards, and the fact that Israel has not said that its attacks will be confined to targets within Iranian territory.
Now,
Yes.
just a second there. Let's touch where it hurts Nigeria. Let's talk about global oil routes. Let's talk about how it affects the world, first of all, and the implications that it has for a country like Nigeria that's totally dependent on exporting oil. What are we looking at here? Is this going to affect our price in any way? And how are we going to fare if it does?
Well, it's a bit contextual, right? But the potential for the potential, obviously the conflict has moved oil prices first and foremost, right? So oil prices are probably at their highest levels, at the very least, that we've seen this year. For a country like Nigeria, where first the cost of producing a barrel of crude here in Nigeria is relatively high compared to other crude exporters globally, that's generally seen as a good sign. Secondly, our national budget benchmark, the benchmark price for a barrel of crude, which we've used as the basis for setting the national budget for this year, was also much higher than where crude prices has been throughout the year. So obviously, international Brent going up and our reference crude benchmark Bonny Light being priced as a premium to Brent, that obviously helps. The extra layer, right, to that is that Nigerian oil production has been relatively soft historically. It's come up now, right, to about 1.5-ish million barrels of crude produced per day if you add condensate, right? But while that is good compared to where we've been over the last 3 to 5 years, right, where we've essentially been producing between 1.1 to 1.2 million barrels, that's a good thing. But Nigeria's production capacity is at almost 2 million barrels of crude. So there's a question around whether our current production levels will enable us take advantage of higher crude prices. The third thing to mention is that a lot of our crude production is already provisioned for, mostly through direct contracts with international oil trading firms. Those prices have already been locked in and been set. Those contracts have been signed for months and often stretch for at the very minimum a year and a half, and they will not be at these higher crude prices. So a lot of our crude production will actually happen. A lot of our crude production will actually be sold at much lower prices than we see right now. The only advantage is, heading forward, right? In terms of some of the crude contracts that we may be able to lock in from here over the next probably 3 to 6 months, we could lock those in at some of these higher prices. Right. But again, if we had a lot more crude production, then Nigeria would probably, or Nigerian policymakers would probably be feeling much better than they are right now.
Right. I mean, beyond economics, we have to also talk about, the security dimension of this, right? And giving Nigeria's position, not just religious, but also our Muslim ties with, both Western and Muslim majority countries. We have to put this to the fore. Do you think with this fallout, it would affect Nigeria? Would there be a risk of proxy ripple, whether with ideology or otherwise, in terms of, ripple effects?
Well, you have to break down that indicator, along two lines. First is the sovereign line in terms of, how the Nigerian government approaches this. Yeah, successive Nigerian administrations, this one included, have done a pretty interesting job of towing the middle line internationally in terms of how it manages the Israeli sort of Palestinian relationship, which is sort of the critical lynch point of any sort of engagement with any number of countries in the Middle East. We've generally taken the middle road, which is to essentially say, okay, we recognize the right of Palestinians to self-determination, while at the same time not being overtly dramatic enough in our official statements or in aspects of our diplomatic relationship in order to, in effect, give the Israeli side any sort of discomfort. So, we've maintained diplomatic relations with Israel while still theoretically supporting Palestinian sovereignty. The second is a bit more cultural, right, and social, as you've said, and that's where religion comes into play. Nigeria is vastly predominantly Sunni Muslim. There are two main strands, right, of Islam, Sunni and Shia Islam, and Iran is predominantly Shia Islam, right? And so in the past, we've actually had some issues with Iranian, sort of geopolitical engagement in this part of the world, or just West and Central Africa in general, but Nigeria in particular, because there is a very small but very vocal Shia minority, right, in Nigeria, exemplified by an organization called the Islamic Movement of Nigeria, led for decades by Ibrahim El-Zakzaky. We've arrested him a number of times. He's been incarcerated in various Nigerian prisons, right, for years. But he has received training, he has received support, he has received financial and moral support from Iran. He's even been to Iran several times and schooled in Iran, and that has been a problem, right, for Nigeria for a while. And even though we have diplomatic ties with Iran, it's a point that successive Nigerian administrations have made clear that level of engagement with the IMN is one that Abuja finds very uncomfortable. And so in that sense, right, Nigeria has not been motivated to come out strongly, either diplomatically by making statements or doing anything significant or overt, like dialing down its diplomatic engagement with Israel in favor of Iran, just because of, first, that cultural divide between the type of Islam which is practiced in Iran and the one that many Nigerian Muslims pay fidelity to, but also because of Iran's own geopolitical moves within within Nigeria and within Nigeria's near abroad. So in that sense, I would say this current conflict is one that, from a geopolitical standpoint, Nigeria probably is able to sit out. It's interesting to note that the body language of many of the other actors in the Middle East, all of whom are, Sunni Islam, or at least are run by, Sunni Muslim administrations, but they may have significant Shia Islam minorities, is to essentially call for caution, right? Okay. Many of them are not friends of Iran. Many of them don't have diplomatic relations with Islam. So it's not our fight. We've largely just...
Let's take a shift from diplomatic relationships now. Let's talk about what Nigeria would owe its people who are in conflict-prone areas. Only just yesterday, or was it 2 days ago, Israel issued a communication to people who might be in these areas, these conflict-prone areas, or even all countries, asking them very specifically to be cautious. One of these communications said that they should not display flags openly, amongst other things that were quite, it seemed like they were gearing up for something. Nigeria, on the other hand, I'm wondering, what does Nigeria owe its, citizens who are in these areas, especially maybe even in places like Israel? Are we taking these cautions ourselves? Are we putting it out? Are we making arrangements for people who are outside the country? What suggestions do you have for the authorities there?
Well, in terms of what Nigeria is doing, that's not very clear, and I think that's been one of the consistent failings is the word that is in my head, but I don't necessarily know that. Well, shortcomings is probably a better way to describe it, right? Of Nigerian diplomatic statecraft, which is offering the right kind of consular support to Nigerians abroad. This is something that we have personally seen at SBM Intelligence with one of our colleagues. The first exchange during the first round of exchanges between Israel and Iran, we actually had a colleague who was in Israel, right, on handling a research project, and it was actually quite difficult to get her out of the country, and we had no form of consular support whatsoever in order to facilitate that. So the Nigerian Foreign Service, the Foreign Ministry, could do a lot better in terms of one, offering rules of engagement for Nigerians, both in Israel and in Iran. There are Nigerians who are in Iran, by the way, in terms of how they manage and coordinate their activities and what they should do in the event of any sort of conflict escalation, what sort of hotline to reach, what kind of services they should expect, and all of that. It's not clear that exists right now, and that is something that needs to change going forward for Nigerians themselves, in terms of what they need to do, sort of on a more personal level. It always helps when you're abroad, just generally, to keep a low profile, right? You are there at the discretionary pleasure of the regulatory and the government authorities there anyway, to begin with. That's really what your visa gives you a right to. It's not an absolute right, it is a conditional right, and you should live and carry out your activities with that sort of mindset, right, in place. It always helps in conflict-prone territories to have something close to an exit strategy. May be good to have an open ticket just in case things come up and you need to leave the country. But it may also be good to have a plan B that involves some kind of overland travel. If you are in Israel, for example, right now, the main international airport has been closed for the third day running, and so you can't actually even fly or leave the country, right, in any sense. And there have been flight restrictions, right, over Iranian territory. Many airlines are electing not to overfly both Israeli and Iranian territory out of an abundance of caution. And so probably in the early phase of a conflict, it would help to just double down, wait, watch the situation, but probably plan, right, a potential exit strategy if you feel you have to leave the country. right, in mind. And with these things and with all conflicts, right, the situation is always dynamic. It is always subject to change. And so, make sure your plans aren't set in stone, just generally, and be flexible and be open to adjusting, as the situation on the ground changes.
Okay, you study patterns and public sentiments, giving your job. And I have to ask you, just very quickly, in 30 seconds, do you think that Nigeria understands what's at stake and is ready for what's to come, or are they just, skimping at it and letting it fly under the radar? Very quickly.
Our strategy has always been wait and see, and I think this particular conflict will not necessarily change that. Is that wise? Not necessarily, considering the geopolitical and economic implications, but the capacity of the Nigerian state to effectively execute on a more proactive strategy is a bit challenged. We've got many problems at home. We've got many problems in and near abroad. This is just, entering the queue or added to the pile, as it were. And unfortunately, we are likely to be a bit more reactionary if this conflict significantly escalates to a point where it begins to directly harm a lot of Nigeria's direct and indirect interests.
Right. Ekemese, we want to say thank you for taking out the time to join us. Ekemese Effiong, he is a partner and head research at SBM Intelligence, giving us a bit of insight and the implications of the Iran-Israel conflict and what it would mean for Nigeria. Once again, many thanks. We appreciate you for coming.
Thank you very much.
Pleasure having me.
Indeed. Now do stay tuned, because coming up we have more conversation. It's only half point here on Breakfast Extra. We'll be right back.
And off to Delta State we go, where tension is mounting in the community of Agbaro, where the alarming disappearance of several children has sent families into anguish and prompted calls for urgent government action. While women in the community initially reported that 26 children were missing, the chairman of Ugeli North Local Government Area, Jaro Egbo, has now confirmed that 7 cases have been verified. Now, this update came shortly after a Security Council meeting held at the local government secretariat in Ugeli, where the chairman also announced the appointment of a panel of inquiry to investigate the disturbing trend. News Central's Austin Azu was on the ground and filed this report. Take a look.
Agbaro women have recently held a peaceful protest to draw attention to the alleged disappearance of 26 children from their community over the past few months.
What I want government to do for me, I want to make the try possible best. Make the video the community. Anywhere where they had my lucky Eriga, make the search out.
The council chairman, Jaro Egbo, visited the community where he met with the victims' parents, traditional ruler, DPO, and scheduled a Security Council meeting for Tuesday at the council secretariat in Ugeli. The Security Council meeting consists of all the DPOs in Ugeli Command, other security agencies, victims' parents, chiefs from Agbaro Kingdom, among others.
This is called as a further deliberation on our missing children, stealing of our children in Agbaro.
The chairman addresses the press on the outcome of the meeting.
But let us correct this impression. 26 children aren't missing. For now, we've been able to establish that 7 are missing. It is very painful that 7 children will be missing. The police, all the security agencies were not put on alert. I don't want to indict the police, but they all said they went to the police, and in the process, they were not fairly treated. Let's say that they did not get good response from the police. That is what they said, they alleged. And so, because we are not satisfied with what the police were doing, we have now referred the matter back to area commander to do proper investigation to unearth those 7 children that are missing. We have taken their photographs, we have taken the names of the mother of the with victims. We've also set up a 5-man committee headed by Shokoro to liaise between victims and the police. And also if they need them, they can bring them here. If they want lawyer, we'll provide lawyer for them. If they want any answers, we'll do that for them.
The council chairman also revealed efforts to forestall any further actions capable of truncating the peace in the community.
These scam villagers, they are your condemned people. The activities are suspended for now in Agaro. The immigration told us that most of them are not properly profiled. So because they're not profiled, we don't know who is doing this. So for now, we have resolved that scavenging, which is iron condemned, is for now suspended in Agbaro Kingdom, the whole of their communities. 2, that they should be very vigilant to ensure that this doesn't repeat itself. And also to also educate their children, because the rumor we hear is that most of this is linked to Yahoo business, ritual killing. So as a government, we want to follow up this case to the letter, to everything, to ensure that this doesn't repeat itself. And that if anybody is involved, we'll bring them to book.
The panel is expected to submit its reports within 2 weeks. In Ugele for News Central, Austin Azu.
So joining us now is the reporter himself, News Central correspondent Austin Azu. Austin, good morning to you. Thank you very much for joining us. But Austin, these are very, very worrying situations that we are seeing from Delta State there. Please, could you give us an exact idea of what or who it might have been that these children might have been, well, the perpetrators? What's been said since after that report?
Good morning and happy Father's Day, Zeno, and good morning, Judith.
You can't tell me happy Father's Day.
Agbaro and environ for the past few weeks has been embroidered. Sorry? Hello? Can you hear me?
I can hear you loud and clear. I was saying that you didn't wish me
confirm if
happy
you can hear
Father's
me.
Day.
Yes, we can. Go ahead, please.
Okay, thank you. Happy Father's Day. All right, Agbaro and environs for the past few weeks has been embroidered with insecurity, and of course the women, the Egweya precisely, came out in their large number a few weeks ago to demonstrate over the occurring incidents of what they called incessant disappearance of their children. And according to what they said in that protest, they alleged that they were 26 in number. So we quickly activate our crew and went to Ugele precisely, and thereafter went to Agbaro. We stormed the community, we interrogated the residents of the community about what has been happening. And of course, we are able to get to the spokesperson for the Egweya, and the Egweya makes the spokesperson. And for the women, we engaged her. She told us everything they did on that very day. They said they went to the street to protest, they went to the King's Palace, they went to the police station, and they came back to their various homes, expectedly that they want a result. However, of course, you know, the media will take it up. We are able to look at the issues they raised, and we started amplifying it. We stayed on that story for about 2 days before the local government chairman came, went to the community and interfaced with them before he scheduled a Security Council meeting, which was this weekend, Tuesday. So at the end of the Security Council meeting, the chairman was able to confirm that from all the information gathered and for all those who came to complaints about their missing children, actually brought down to 7. So that was what he said, that the numbers of those declared missing, allegedly, according to him, were 7. But nevertheless, we were able to speak to the victims' parents. We spoke to 2 on the ground, and we spoke to 1 on the phone. Precisely, we engaged Mila Loki and his wife, who said that their last child happens to be 6 years. Little Eriga came back from school on that very day. And according to that was a Sunday this particular Sunday, last week Sunday, And he said that Sunday, making it 10 days, the child was declared missing. So we engaged both of them, and they told us everything that happened. That the child came back from school after his lunch. He just went to play with his peers. After playing with his, after 1 hour interval, the mom started looking for the child. Very unfortunate, from that particular day to date, the child has not been found. According to them, that they went to the police station to go and make the documentation at Agbaro, and after the documentation, he was told that within 24 hours that he will get a feedback from them. After the 24 hours, he didn't get any feedback. He never bothered going back to the police station. But after a few days interval, he was told, that's Mila Eriga, the captor and the father of Eriga. He went to Ekpan police station. According to him, that he had an information that there was a missing child that was found at Ekpan. So he went to Ekpan police station. Getting there, he discovered that that was not his son. So he came back home. So after a while, he was just like, what am I going to do? According to him, that he went to various sources, that he has spent above 100,000 in going about looking for his child. Of course, I asked him, did you pay anyone that 100,000? He said no, that what he did was to begin to look from for the child from one place to another, consulting the oracle, going to church, just to ensure that he's able to find his child.
Just a second, Austin. For a bit more clarity, I would like to know, these children, were they collected as a group, or were they different accounts or reports that were made? Because initially there were more than 20. Now we have 7 children that are missing. Were they all together? Were they all together in this community before they went missing, or did they go missing one after the other?
Yes, actually, they got missing one after the other, because from the people we interviewed, and even from the spokesperson of the Egweya, confirmed that the first incident they recorded was December last year. And of course, the police have that record. And from that December last year to January, a lot of persons, according to them, have been missing, precisely the children between the age of 3 to 10 years. And the one in March actually struck them that just like what happened in one of the novels we read, that a child born today, the child dies, and the next morning another child died, the following day another child died. So the hue and cry in Agbaro became so disturbing that prompted their protest. However, that of the little Eriga and one other woman whose name is very lucky as well, said that their children missed within this particular in May. What happened in May 29? What happened in May 27? So it's not only within Agbaro. We equally interviewed some other residents within the Agbaro community, because Agbaro comprises of so many communities, but the name Agbaro becomes a bigger picture.
Can you tell us what Agbaro community is like as against what Ugeli is like? Ugeli is a very urban place. Just to give us an idea of what the community these children were taken from is like. Is it like a small village type community, or is it urbanized itself?
Yes, Agbaro is not really urbanized compared to Ugele. When you talk about cities or major towns in Delta, Agbaro will not be counted among the towns in Delta, but it will be counted as semi-urban, because Agbaro has an explosive population over a million, because the population is increasing on a daily basis. We have a lot of persons who have left Efrum, Warri, than to be living in Agbaro because of the proximity to the twin city of Warri, Efrum, and Udu and environ. So a lot of persons come from those areas and they are living there. But within Agbaro, you can still see some elements of rural areas, because most of the houses are not fenced and they are still living this their communal life. So imagine a child who came back from school after his lunch, just went to play with his peers, and of course you can imagine how it looks like, just like the rural setting where you have a lot of children clustered in one place to be playing and dancing and all those ones. So they still enjoy their communal life system. Right. So it's one of the angle at which these children started, they started missing.
Austin. Yeah, so I'm gonna, first of all, before I ask my question, I just want to put it out here to our viewers that we reached out to the PRO for the Delta State Command of the Police, and that's SP Bright Daffy, and unfortunately he had to turn down that invitation. He said he wouldn't be able to make it for this interview. So Austin, you're left to answer this question, right? the numbers streamed down very quickly from 26 to 7. And it was because of the chairman of Ughelli local government area who said that the only verifiable cases were 7. Have you spoken to the mothers or the parents of the 7 children, or are other parents of the 26, unconfirmed 26, crying out at this point and saying that their case should also be part of that 7?
Yes, actually on that day of the Security Council meeting, we saw the mothers in their numbers. But however, after the meeting, they started going back to their respective places. But nevertheless, we were able to speak with some of them, particularly Mila Lucky and his wife, Vero, the lady who spoke to, and one other lady, but I can't remember her name now. But striking aspect of what happened in Agbaro a day after, after most of these children were allegedly declared missing, and after the protest, we tried our best to reach out to the victim's mother. And of course, there was one particular woman who lives in Agbaro. Of course, after the incident, she told us that she went to Abraka to go and meet her husband's people, because her husband's people, according to her, were pressurizing her, were asking her to come and give explanation of what happened to their son. Vis-a-vis ditto the other issues that some of them have even resorted to traditional means of looking for their child. We equally asked particularly Vero, the mother of the victim, we asked her what happens that you went to church and all those ones. Said even she was in Agbaro, but her husband has gone to Awushi. According to her, that her husband is from Awushi, she is from Delta here, and her husband have gone to Awushi to go and sort traditional means of finding out. And she confirmed to us that from what they have seen on the Africa CCTV camera, in quotes, that the child is still, is still living. But from other people we interviewed, actually they made some allegations. From what the chairman just said, now you can affirm that they made allegations to the fact that scavengers are responsible for this incessant stealing of children in Agbaro, and hence we alleged that because of this suspension has been placed to ensure that all the activities are suspended for now. But however, it's very painful that at the end of the censoring and the profiling, they were able to get 7 out of the 26 that we alleged. And out of the 7 that have been confirmed, they were told that their file document will now be transferred from Agbaro Police Division down to the area command. That the area command will be the one to supervise and oversee whatever happened within the case file. Because of course, whatever that is not brought before the police, according to what we heard, that whatever is not incidented in the police station cannot be reported or cannot be confirmed except the police are able to give us an accurate figure. So we are waiting for the police now to tell us and give us an accurate figure of the numbers so far. Right. But don't forget that the village setting and the rural community, Mr. Lucky Miller went to the police station to go and report. After a few days, he didn't get feedback. So he didn't go back to the police station again. And subsequently, some other people said they went to the police station, but they were not given fair treatment. We don't know if the police will be able to confirm that. All right. But what is on ground now is to ensure that they're able to get the 7 children missing from Agbaro, to ensure they are able to reunite with their parents, and Agbaro comes back to life again. Because as at the moment, people are living in fears. Right. Nobody is willing to leave his child an inch from where he's staying or where she's staying. Right. And Austin, as you've already started, so let's continue on that line, shall we? This report, you brought this report to us on Sunday, and so far they have now set a probe, and we now know that it is 7 verified cases of children missing. What's the latest in terms of the probe committee, or better yet, the panel that's been set up to inquire and follow up on this? What's the latest with them? Is there any leads regarding the 7 children? From what we gathered so far, the committee is being headed by illustrious son of Agbaro, and the security agencies are fully involved in that committee. The 5-man panel committee is set up by the council chairman. However, we gathered that the committee have started working already, but what we are not certain is the number of those who have gone to meet the committee to tender the requirements that the council chairman requested them to submit before the panel of inquiry. And the panel of inquiry were given 2 weeks. 2 weeks to ensure they are able to expedite action and come out with their findings so that the necessary relevant authorities will pick it from there. As we speak at the moment, from what the chairman said, that the state government is fully involved in this, the local government is fully involved in this, that if the police are not, their investigation are not cogent enough, that the council chairman would take it over from there. But he said that the police must first do their work to ensure they're able to establish the numbers of those who are missing and establish their photographs, their names and the pictures as their parents' name and their phone numbers, so that it will be established that these are the numbers of those missing. At the moment, what we are still hearing, they are all alleged, because most of them have not been able to provide the names and their photographs of these missing children. And another information we gathered that most of those victims' parents have left Agbaro. That after the incident, some of them traveled to their villages to go and sort for alternative means of getting their children. And what we equally gathered that about on Thursday ago, that some of them went back to the Agbaro Police Division to go and properly document their case before the police authorities, so that they will be able to have an authoritative clean list or paper that will be presented that these are the names, the photograph of the children missing in Agbaro. It's expected that in coming days, within the next 2 weeks, expected for the committee to turn in their reports, that a sign of relief will be heard in Agbaro about some of these missing children. We equally heard that there was a particular case that was trending in Agbaro, that someone was caught in an attempt to allegedly steal away a child from Agbaro, and that person was accosted by the vigilante, and he was given the beating of his life. Thereafter, handed over to the security agency. And after dropping the young man at the police station, and nobody came to incident any case against him. And after a period of time, but a week thereabout, according to what we gathered, that the police let the guy to go. From the council security meeting, the chairman mandated that person should be recalled back to the police station and face proper interrogation over the incessant disappearances of these children. And I think it was 2 days ago that he was arraigned at the magistrate court in Agbaro. And from what we gathered so far, he has been given a sentence. So we don't know the sentence that he was given, but we'll follow up with that story to unravel what happened thereafter. We are still on this issue to ensure that we're able to get to the root of this and get those children reported accordingly.
Okay, so this might be my final question on this instance here. There have been implicative conclusions as to who the culprits might be. There's a ban on scavengers currently, and then there was also the mention as that these are activities of Yahoo boys. The question is very hard, but it has to be asked. If there seems to be a specific category of children that are being kidnapped, why are they being kidnapped? Has anybody perhaps maybe raised that question, why these children are being kidnapped, what they might be used for? I know it's very hard and sensitive, but it's a question that has to be asked.
Well, from the chairman's statement, one could actually deduce the fact that he accused and pointed towards the suspected ritualists and suspected Yahoo boys involved in this whole menace playing out in Agbaro and environs. And don't forget to that from Agbaro down to Otokutu, in so many years ago was known for a very serious crime of ritual killings and so on and so forth, particularly under the bridge of Otokutu. So it became a scaring scene for most people who are applying that route. However, what has played out in Agbaro in the past few weeks and the past few months are pointed towards that angle as well, because no sensible human being will come and steal away a child from his parents or her parents, knowing fully well that this child will become a very useful person to our society tomorrow. So all fingers are pointing towards ritual killings and Yahoo Plus and so on and so forth. But the police will tell us more about this to know what exactly these suspects are using these little children for. Imagine between the age of 3 years to 10 years. Of what use? What are you using the children for? Of course, we have seen some of these reports in most of the police parade, whereby we saw some parents, some individuals, trafficking children. We don't know if it's for traffickers, but we don't equally know if it's for Yahoo Plus or for ritualists. Okay. But all we are concerned is to ensure that we are able to get the roots of this and report to the public what has happened to the children, and those behind it, being dealt with accordingly.
Right then. Austin Azu, thank you very much for bringing us that report and also for joining us this morning here. We hope that there is a conclusion to this story and that the parents are reunited with their children. Oh, yes. Thank you very much, Austin.
Austin Azu there, correspondent live from Delta, from the capital, Asaba. Let's go on a short break. When we return, we'll bring you the breakfast headlines. Stay with us. And you're welcome back. It's time for us to bring you breakfast headlines here on the hour. My name is Judith Atibi, and we'll begin with tragedy that struck in Yelewata town, Guma local government area of Benue State, where over 107 bodies have been recovered following a coordinated night assault by suspected armed assailants. Eyewitnesses say the attackers launched the raid under the cover of darkness, splitting into 3 groups to execute a well-coordinated attack on the community. Confirming the incident on Saturday, Benue State Police Public Relations Officer SP Udeme Edet said tactical units were swiftly deployed to the area and engaged the attackers in a gun battle. The attack is being described as one of the deadliest in recent times in a region already grappling with frequent outbreaks of violence. Residents of Ayegulu Igu Borno in Uduape, Kaba Borno local government area of Kogi State took to the streets on Saturday, protesting what they described as escalating insecurity in the community. The protesters, made up mostly of women and children, women and youths, I beg your pardon, say they can no longer access their farms as bandits have overrun the area. They decry the rising rate of abductions, which they say has left the community in fear. Chanting solidarity songs and carrying placards, the demonstrators vowed to continue their protests until authorities take urgent steps to ensure the safety of lives and property in the area. And on to political matters, where the Southeast National Vice Chairman of the People's Democratic Party, Chidebere Egu, says the party can no longer afford to keep losing ground in its traditional strongholds across the region. Speaking at a stakeholders meeting held at the PDP Secretariat in Umuahia, the Abia State capital, Egu called for greater unity and cooperation among party members. Also present at the meeting were Abia State PDP Chairman Ahmed Abraham and his Imo State counterpart Austin Nwachukwu, both of whom echoed similar concerns.
And what I'm seeing here today, I strongly believe soonest the game will change for it. So therefore, we will not allow people to come and snatch our belongings as usual. Already map up a strategy to make sure we claim Abia State back for
Abia PDP and the parents. We met a lot of challenges. We are determined to take over power.
We are trying to make sure that PDP does not lose dive in the Southeast. You know, from 1979, 1999 to date, Southeast has remained the home of the People's Democratic Party. Even when we have governors in other political parties, you know how they came. If the PDP had put our foot down, they wouldn't have become governors. Because we were like sleeping, and they took advantage of us and became governors in the Southeast.
And off to South Africa, where the country's soldiers have returned home after completing their deployment to the Eastern Democratic Republic of Congo under a Southern African Development Community peacekeeping mission. The first group of 249 troops arrived at the Waterloo Air Force Base in Pretoria, where they are welcomed with cheers and fist bumps. Their mission, which began in December of 2023, aimed to help restore peace in the conflict-ridden region. The South African Development Community announced the mission's end in March after 17 soldiers were killed, prompting growing calls for troop withdrawal.
The fact that we are alive, that's what matters. And that we are back to our families, that's what. Obviously, we will never forget what happened to other heroes, but let's celebrate life and be grateful.
Also, a big welcome back home to the valiant soldiers. Here's where we close the curtain for breakfast headlines at this hour. It's back to Breakfast Extra. I'm Judith Timi. Thanks for watching.
It's our second weekend installment for Extra Special here on Breakfast Extra, where we shine a light on stories of courage, resilience, and social change. Now, today is International Albinism Awareness Day, a moment to honor the challenges and also celebrate the lives of people with albinism globally. It's a day dedicated to promoting inclusion, ensuring life preservation, and dismantling long-standing myths and stigma. In Nigeria, individuals with albinism face barriers from social exclusion and bullying to serious health risks like skin cancer and visual impairments. But with greater awareness, accurate medical care, and community support, we can truly change lives.
And so to help us explore this topic, we're joined by two remarkable guests. Here in the studio is Dr. Folakemi Ko-Adeife. She's a consultant physician and also a dermatologist at Lagos State University Teaching Hospital. She joins us live here in the studio, and she will work with us, or she will walk us through the clinical and preventive side. Also joining us is TJ Amin. He's a broadcast journalist and a person living with albinism, and he will share with us his personal insights on daily experiences, representation, and his advocacy as well. Lady and gentlemen, welcome to the program.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Amin, let's start with you. First off, let's talk about the challenges for people living with albinism. I mean, here in Nigeria, we have different, kinds of stigma that people go through. I was wondering how that affected, perhaps, maybe if you could give us a life experience or the experience generally of people who live with albinism, so we get a background view or perspective of this condition.
Hi, thank you for having me. Basically, I would say that it's not far from what has been known. It's not far from the information out there. But as a person living with albinism, the lived experience for me while I was living in Nigeria was the regulars, the social made, the stigma, the access, the inability to access the right medical prescriptions for my glasses, and etc. So I think that conversation has been stretched. Yes, it's very important that we talk about like everything that goes on with us, but it's not so far off. I would also say that I come from a place of privilege. I'll be very honest. One thing I always say to myself is my reality as a person living in albinism while I was in Nigeria is very different from a lot of people's lived experiences. And this is because we're all born in different environments, born into different families. So mine specifically, I would say it differs. And it wasn't a regular experience because I grew up in a family where I wasn't made to feel different. There was not at any point in my life where my parents made me feel like I was very different. I went to boarding house. I did the whole round. I did everything that a normal person in quotes would do, and not until when I go into like secondary school, university, I started realizing, but it was too late because the foundation has already been set. So what I just did was just adjust and understand that, yes, you are peculiar, you're special, and you just need to just still with this same confidence that has been brewing from when we were young. You just need to just know how to adapt into the system. So like I said, my lived experiences my lived experience in Nigeria is very different, very, very different. So I would not speak for a large sector of people, but I would just say mine was very different.
Okay, so noting that, how significant is such a day as this for you, a person living with albinism, anybody who's empathetic to people living with albinism, or even the authorities who should take charge in providing care and policies for people living with albinism?
So now I moved to the United Kingdom, and since I moved 2 years ago, I've advocated for this because I would say that my perception or my lived experience as a person living albinism in the United Kingdom has shown me that a lot of things were happening that were not normal. The experiences I had, the way I had to adapt, the way I had to fix myself into the system, the struggles I had as a person living albinism in Nigeria definitely differs from the experiences I'm having now. And this is for so many reasons. The theme for this year is demanding our rights, protecting our skin, and preserving our lives. And because I now understand that inclusion is not just a word that can be thrown around. Inclusion, if you're using the word inclusion, and this is a very direct message to like all the government bodies in charge, if you're using the word inclusion, you have to be inclusion proactive. Inclusion proactive is not just identifying that there are people living with this condition. It's making sure that you create a very inclusive environment for them. I live in the United Kingdom now. I've been officially certified as a visually impaired person. There are accommodations that will always be made for me in every space. We have an Equality Act in Nigeria, the same Equality Act we have all over the world. But we do not see that Equality Act being put to, we do not see people acting on it. We do not see these government bodies acting on it. So it's a different thing to say you are inclusive, and it's a different thing to say you are inclusive proactive or inclusion proactive. And that's what we want to see. We don't just want to see people celebrate these days and say, oh, yes, today is International Albinism Awareness. They want to see people say, these are the steps we've put in place. I can say that for a good part of my life, 25 years of my life, I never knew that I could get assistive devices, low vision aids to help my visual impairment. I was going to ophthalmologists for prescriptions that never existed, because they could not. It's not like they did not know that I was living with albinism, but there's no structure in place to direct me to the right places to get the help that I need. So it goes beyond just giving face caps and umbrellas and sunscreens. Sunscreens are so important, but it goes beyond that. These are real issues. The quality of my life has improved because I've gotten the much needed help. So yes, please, the government bodies, don't just say you are inclusive. Be inclusion proactive. Do the right things. Identify these conditions and make sure that you are meeting the needs. That is why this thing is so important to us.
Right. TJ has just set us on the course for our next question. I'm coming to you here for Lakemi in the studio. He's saying that he comes from a place of privilege, and he just reminds me of back then as a child. There was an albino friend of mine, I don't know where he is now, but his name was Sunday, and for some weird reason, Sunday refuses to leave the sun, right? So by the time we got to teenage years, it was already too late. He was playing football, he had a bad eyesight, he missed the goalpost, he had wounds and sores on his skin because he was always on the sun. He would take salt, because again, the conditions were poor. But then he had to play, and we came from a neighborhood where the children could run wild and free. And so it begs to ask a question about the key medical concerns for people with albinism, put into factor privilege and the lack thereof of the privilege, and why is it early that dermatological care is very essential at early stage?
Right, thank you. For albinism, which is a genetic condition, that involves the lack or the reduction of the production of melanin. It's something that is inherited from parents, and people who are with albinism, both parents must have had the gene. And in the absence of melanin, the skin is unable to protect itself adequately against the UV rays from the sun, and so they are at increased risk of skin damage from the sun. So they can develop, accelerated photoaging, also the dreaded skin cancer.
Right.
And so people with albinism need to have some degree of, or a much higher degree of sun protection.
Right.
Otherwise, as you mentioned, like your friend, by the time they're in their teens or early 20s, you begin to see the signs of sun damage, starting with the excessive freckles, and then dry, itchy skin, and then eventually the sores, which are actually pre-skin cancers or early skin cancers, yes. By the time they start to have those sores, that's something we call actinic keratosis, which, if not treated, can develop into skin cancer. And so we see skin cancer in people with albinism as early as the age of 20 or in their 20s and 30s if proper care is not taken. And yes, it's difficult because people with albinism are people like everyone else. Children with albinism are children who love to play outdoors, who love to play with their friends, and so they will, you know, like your friend, not want to listen when people say stay indoors. But the education needs to be there from an early age so that they understand the importance of sun protection and sun safety. And so we advocate that from right from when they are born, the parents of people with albinism should be educated on how best to care for their child and how to explain to them why they need to be sun safe or sun smart, which is what we talk about. So they can live absolutely perfect, normal lives. Of course, also they have issues with the vision because the melanin affects the eyes. I mean, the lack of melanin in the eyes affects vision.
Let's
and
talk
they have
about
no
that,
vision.
Doctor. Let's zero in on that because I heard Amin in his submission tell about the uniqueness of his condition when it comes to his vision. Yeah, he said he has just been certified with as a person, as a visually impaired person.
Yes.
How different is it from someone like me using
people with
glasses
albinism, the low vision that they experience usually is not correctable by glasses. Like you're short-sighted and you get glasses, or you're long-sighted. So it's a bit more complicated than that. And so people with albinism, even though they are prescribed corrective glasses, it may not make much of a difference. And so there are specialized visual aids that are made for people with the kind of visual impairment that is associated with albinism. And that's what he was talking about. Because I have met a lot of people with albinism say, oh, I've been to the ophthalmologist, I've been prescribed glasses, but it doesn't seem to make much of a difference.
Why don't we seem to have the solutions for people living with albinism that have these visual impairments here in Nigeria?
So I think it's a learning curve. It's a growing trend. So we have
capitalism.
Not capitalism, probably specialization in that aspect of ophthalmology because it's quite special. So just like, we may have a bit of a dearth of various specialists. So there is kind of a special kind of prescription that is required for people with albinism.
Right.
But he spoke about the fact that he was in a place, he grew up in a place of privilege, which a lot of people with albinism don't have.
Yeah.
And yes, and I get to meet a lot of people with albinism who struggle to, be able to afford basic things like sunscreen or even corrective lenses and things like that. And it's a challenge. And then you also have the issue of stigma. There is still a lot of stigma in some communities in the country about albinism. And I just spoke with parents who, had initially kind of been ashamed of their child because the child had albinism. Some were even in denial and said, oh, the child doesn't have albinism, decide to dye their hair. Some had people threaten them. A mother said, when she was walking with her child, someone said, "Owore," which means this is money. Some people believe people with albinism can be used for money rituals. And so these are some of the challenges that people with albinism face across Nigeria and Africa as a whole. In some African countries, they have to be hidden because they are killed for their body parts to be used. So these are things that we need to change this narrative and make people realize that people with albinism are people just like you and I. They are not going to be useful to you for anything if you think like rituals like some people believe. And they shouldn't be discriminated against because of their skin color. All skin colors are beautiful, and we should appreciate everybody in whatever skin tone they, appear or find themselves.
Just you talking about that open sore and saying that's an onset for what could be cancer.
Yeah.
I'm still very shook by it because, Sunday, if you're watching me, I hope that you're good. But let me come to you, TJ, right, and talk about the stigma and misconceptions and stereotypes that, people living with albinism face. And let's just talk about that. With your advocacy, I want you to just, put out the clarion call and how best as Nigeria we can destigmatize persons living with albinism.
I just want to add that, first of all, when I said I come from a place of privilege, it did not exclude me from the social stigma that comes with persons living with albinism. When I said I come from a place of privilege, it wasn't about the wealth that my parents had acclaimed. I come from a place of privilege because my environment, the environment I had, not necessarily the wealth or not necessarily the care that was given to me, which of course is very important. I'm talking about the environment I had was enabling. And that's why this conversation is so important. So it's not just about my home. It's about the whole world. It's about Nigeria and Africa as a whole. That privilege should extend to everyone in the sense that everyone should see everyone as unique in their own ways, and everyone should be more accommodating. So when I said I come from a place of privilege, it wasn't in respect to how I was being cared for. It was just the environment I was born in. And yes, I also want to say that it's not as deep as we are phrasing it when it comes to like the assistive aids that persons with albinism need. It's not so special in quote. I would like to correct that because this is my lived experience. I believe that we just need to, and I'll go back to what one of you said, and it starts talking about capitalism. There's a lot of things that is wrong. We have these organizations, we have this government bodies set up to protect the rights. And like I mentioned, and I'll say it, I've seen videos. I'm not in Nigeria at the moment, but while I was in Nigeria, while I was doing advocacy, the reason why I wasn't associating with some bodies was because I just felt that they were not hands-on, and like I said, they were not inclusion proactive. Yes, we understand that persons with albinism need sunscreen, but I just talked about visual impairment. It's a struggle. It's a struggle as a Nigerian moving in, even in the education system. So there are a lot of loopholes there. And this is not something that it's so unreachable. It's just people doing what they need to do. So this is a clarion call to all government bodies involved. Every government body that has disability inclusive or that have set up, and these are charity organizations to all the albinism organizations. There is more to it. That is why this thing is so important. It's demanding our rights. When you get into conversations with government parastatals, the conversation should move from face caps and umbrellas. It should move to visual assistive devices. It should move to, yes, provision of sunscreen. Yes, it should move to the World Health Organization. Just recently, there's a debate at the moment on adding sunscreen to the medical care that that persons with disabilities need in the world. That's a forward-thinking conversation. Where are we in Nigeria at that? Where are we? What are the laws that are being passed into? You don't just hand out sunscreens on International Albinism Awareness Day. What are the active things that are being done? It's just beyond a one-day celebration. This is something that should be work towards constantly. That is where we get to see. I am of the opinion that it's all in our hands. You and I. We don't have to leave it to one person. The privilege that I have as a person living in albinism can be extended to everyone. We should always make sure that we create a more inclusive environment for the people around us. This goes to the education system, even in employment. That stigma that because of your visual impairment and because of how you look, you cannot do a lot of things. We should have disability confidence schemes. Employers should be disability confident. That is what we can make more people come into the system, and that is how you can actually spot actual talent. Because the odds are already against you as a person living with a disability when you have the talent. I am a broadcast journalist. I'm grateful for the platforms that gave me the platforms that I rode upon when I was in Nigeria to showcase my talent. But I'll tell you for a fact, it wasn't an easy ride. There are not many people that look like me that were in front of the camera, and that should change. So this is just a clarion call to all government bodies involved, not only just all government, this is a clarion call to all Nigerians. It is our responsibility to make the world more inclusive. It's our responsibility to make our environment more inclusive. For other people that don't exactly look like us, it is our responsibility. And that way, we're going to see a better and a more loving society.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you. Falakemi, you wanted to give a bit of response?
Yes, and I would like to thank him for that very, very passionate clarion call. And there is progress. That's what I would just like to say. We have come a bit, but we need to move further. Yeah. And we have now, for instance, in Lagos State, the Lagos Office of Disability Affairs has included albinism in people who benefit from disability assistance. And that is really helpful because it helps to get job opportunities. It helps to provide some of the things that are required, like visual aids and things. And I'm also aware now that even in exams, the WAEC and ECHO, they have separate examination sheets with larger fonts for people with albinism,
right,
so that the children who have albinism, who don't see very well, can see better, and they also have extra time, a bit of extra time in exams. So this has been as a result of some advocacy that has now birthed more inclusiveness, but we still need more. As Amin has mentioned, we still need to ensure that people with albinism have opportunities for work, and their opportunities are considerate of the conditions. So they shouldn't be, like, for instance, walking outside under the sun. You know, if they're in a job, they should be indoors a lot more than being outdoors. And we do need to have the health insurance scheme include skin cancer prevention and treatment as part of health things that are covered under health insurance. And these are things we are pushing for. I'm very happy that the WHO is considering sunscreen as an essential medicine, because once it's on the essential medicines list, then the health insurance in various countries can include it as a drug, and it's available for people with albinism.
That's very interesting. You said
I just want to address something as well, because he was talking about my comments about capitalism. So TJ, here's what I meant, right? And I think it's very important that I made it clear. When I said capitalism, because the field of the optometrics branch of ophthalmology, the branch of it that focuses on albinism, those who have the eye conditions, is very specialized, and you see far in between specialists. The reason why is simply because you go where the money's at, right? It's plain and simple. When you look at all of our public sector, when you look at all of the things that are popular, they're popular because that's where the money's at. And so that's what I mean by capitalism. I'm not saying it's important. It's not important. I'm not saying it's not needed. I'm saying that the reason why they're far and in between, that there are small specialists that attend to a number of persons who have these conditions, is simply because there are no numbers, there's no stats, and it costs money, and not everybody can afford it, hence capitalism.
Doctor, I wanted to say something. You said the Lagos State government, now was it the Lagos State government has made provisions for people who have...
With albinism.
Yes. What about federal government? And I'm not speaking about people living with albinism in urban areas. I'm talking about villages, because these are the people who are more prone to risk, more prone to superstition.
Absolutely.
What has been done on that,
So in the federal government, I can't speak for that, but I know that from Lagos and several albinism association bodies are pushing for the federal government to include, for instance, albinism in the disability list. I think it is now included. And so the Disability Act, is for people with albinism can benefit from some of the things there.
What policies implementation to protect people in rural areas?
So with what we need is we need education. So we need a lot more of the orientation, education, promotion, so that people understand that some of these myths about albinism are wrong. That's the first step, education. And then being able to educate parents who have children with albinism on how best to care for them from an early age. So I think the government can do a lot more education. That's the first step. Public health awareness, public health education on albinism and other rare genetic conditions, because albinism is not the only genetic or skin condition we have in the country, but it's one of the most commonly seen because it's obvious. So educating people about this is number one. Number two is having health insurance for people in rural communities that can be accessible to them, because paying out of pocket for most health things is not affordable for people who are in rural areas, underserved areas, or people of low socioeconomic income classes. So we really need a lot more education. We need more robust health insurance programs that include people in rural areas. And we're trying to push for a lot more advocacy for albinism with the government, with various states. I think Lagos is leading the charge because we're trying to do our best for people with albinism, and we're kind of pushing other states to develop such programs for people with albinism to benefit from.
When you said the skin cancer and you talked about, the vision damage when you were referring to my childhood friend, I'm still very shook by it. I was this close to tears because I remember very clearly those open sores, and there was one on his forearm, there's one on his chest, and he was always running around playing football, and it's scary, right? Because I know that that neighborhood that I grew up in, I still see children who are playing, who now have freckles on their face, and you can see the sun-stressed hair. But if you didn't say this, I would not know that is, So how can parents, from low-income households, what are the preventive strategies that they can adopt for now, very effective ones that they can take before they can go to healthcare centers and all of that, that is important right now? Because
yes, so I understand, and most people don't realize that, and that's why we usually see late-stage skin cancers, because people are, oh, I had this wound, I was told it's an infection, it's not healing, it's skin cancer. You know, and by the time they come to us, there's already, maybe it's spread, and they need to have major surgery and radiotherapy, and unfortunately, we lose some people in the process. So early prevention will be children with albinism should be encouraged to wear the hats when they're outdoors. They should be encouraged not to go outdoors during the very hot hours of the day between 10 and 3 in this part of the world. You want to encourage them to say, okay, you can play football, but let's make it 5 p.m., please. Play with your friends at 5 p.m. When it's 2 p.m., 1 p.m., don't go under the sun. It's difficult, but if you keep explaining to them why it's important, eventually it will help. And then sunscreen. Sunscreen is very important. It's life-saving for people with albinism. A lot of people can't afford sunscreen, and that's why we're pushing for it to be in the essential medicines list so that health insurances can cover sunscreen, at least for people with albinism. And that will take a lot of economic burden off parents of children with albinism or people with albinism themselves. And then, yes, we do talk about the umbrellas because it's important. The visual impairment is as important, but visual impairment will not take your life. Okay, you will still survive, but skin cancer can kill. And so that's why it's very important to stress, particularly in this part of the world where we have high sun intensity. People with albinism must be sun safe to avoid what can lead to skin cancer and untimely death in people with albinism. So we'll keep talking about this, we'll keep educating and encouraging people with albinism to be sun smart, to be sun safe.
Sun smart, sun safe. I mean, let me come to you finally. I want to ask, after you left Nigeria and you got to the UK there, I'm sure that the kind of support that you saw from family to members of their family who are living with the condition was very different from the kind that we might expect or we see here in Africa, in Nigeria. What samples, what example, what suggestions you have for people who have members of family who are living with albinism?
All right. Based off of my experience here, first off, I would have thought, and that was the reason why, while I was in Nigeria, I was always I was looking for organizations where I could, collaborate with and, do advocacy work. And also, the sense of community is so important because you need to give people, everyone needs a sense of belongingness. Moving to the United Kingdom, I did my research, I found out about the Royal National Institute of the Blind. They support anyone with any visual impairment with resources. We're talking about how, in WAEC now, there are larger fonts and all of that. That's what the Royal National Institute of the Blind does here. And then we have the Albinism Fellowship UK and other organizations like that. But if I was going to give an advice to parents anyone that has anyone living with albinism around, I think that the most important thing is to just let them know that they are special, first off, which is a fact. And also, I wanted to add, when I was talking about face caps and umbrellas, I wasn't talking down on that effort, but I've just noticed that year in, year out, that is the only conversation that has been had. And that's the reason why it's also important for a person living albinism to share their lived experiences, because I know it's beyond that. Yes, I understand. Skin cancer is real. I'm wearing a long sleeve now, even here in the United Kingdom. I totally understand. The idea behind the thing for this year is just to understand that the rights that persons living with albinism are supposed to have access to goes beyond that. And that is the range in the conversation that I'm particular about. There are more other things, than what is being emphasized or put forward. So my advice to anyone that has anyone around them living albinism is, like I said, it's our responsibility to create a more inclusive environment for them. Understand their needs. Ask them, how can I help you? How can I improve the quality of your life? Apart from what I know, there's something that one of the presenters said and talking about eating salt. That's a myth. And that is because, and this is something that it's not out there, and that's the reason why there's awareness. Person living albinism eats salt. Salt does not have any effect on a person living albinism. I've eaten salt all my life, and it has not had any effect on me. That is what we are talking about. That is the social myth and stigma. Yeah, so I think we need to do more. Instead of just running off on myths and assumptions, let us ask more questions. Ask questions. How can I help the quality of your life? What can't you do? Not just run off with assumptions or things that people have said. And I think that way we create a more inclusive environment. And that's what changed for me here. When I go in every space I've worked in, they're asking me questions like, how can we help you? And that's the difference between being inclusive and being inclusion proactive. How can we help you? Because they don't know. So they're asking questions.
I mean, we've run out of time, but I want to say thank you very much for summarizing that inside of one question. I think that's what we all have to take away from this conversation here. And the question is, for anybody who's living with albinism, my question to them should be, how can I help you? I mean, thank you very much for being a part of this conversation. It was very, very timely, very necessary, and you were the best person to have it with. And also to you, Dr. Cole Adefa, thank you very much for coming in on a Sunday morning.
Thank you for having me.
Don't you go to church?
No, this is our church. Breakfast Extra.
No, my church is, anyway, let me say, thank you so much.
Thank you for having me.
Thanks, and well, stick around. There's plenty more coming up on the other side. Don't go anywhere.
And you're welcome. You thought we forgot, but we didn't. News strips is a mainstay here when it comes to Breakfast Extra, and we saved it for last, the best. Judith, you're doing this with me as usual, so
of course.
let's begin today's what do you call them, strips?
Yeah. Shall we?
Let's please. So there was one we missed out from last week that I thought we should have on the show today. Very simple, very interesting, and it is from the Daily Trust. This strip has plenty of meaning for me. With the Eid celebrations from over the week, we all expected to go to our Muslim friends' houses to have some ram meat and everything. But this year, I was a little disappointed because the amount of ram meat that I got was not like the previous year. It was rather, yeah. Thank you very much, Osaini, by the way, I'm not saying, but I wanted more. Unfortunately, and I understand, many people couldn't get as much as they wanted. This strip here puts it in a very fine, concise piece of art.
Why is the ram two-toned?
Yeah, designer ram in Nigeria.
Oh, is that what it is?
In any case, here is a strip where the ram is wishing the chicken happy Eid, wishing you a happy Eid celebration ahead. Dark comedy here because
I think it's going to be the person slaughtered instead of the ram.
From years before, it would be the chicken who's wishing him sarcastically a happy Eid because he's about to you know what happens at the end of the day.
Yeah, of course, yeah.
But this year, we saw a rising ram price as it made Nigerians cut back on Salah festivities. Most people didn't even buy. Some people just looked for alternatives. In this case, the alternative would be this very despondent chicken here. And that's what we see, how the economy has affected celebrations in the past 2 years. I don't know if you had any personal experience. Did you visit any Muslim friends?
I was working now. I didn't get a chance to visit anyone, but I did get packages. You know what I mean, like special packages. They were all delivered to me because I'm that kind of friend. Yeah. Shout out to all my babes and
good for you.
fellas.
But did you get a surplus of ram meat? Is the question.
Yes. Now. What are you talking about? I ate one yesterday. What are you talking about?
So you don't see that the economy actually had an effect on the amount.
Oh, now I sound privileged. So I'm just going to keep it moving and say I see the effect of it, but it did not touch me. You know, because I mean, like I couldn't visit to say hi to all of my friends, but I got delivery, special delivery.
I would like to be added to that friend list. I'm sure Dangote is in there.
But you just talked. But you said you ate now. You just said
what I'm saying is I need bigger friends who can afford more rams. Is my point. But this is the condition in Nigeria here. Let's move on now.
Yeah, of course it is.
And little time. Let's take our second strip for today. Very interesting strips that we gathered from across newspapers now. Very interesting one. This is from Business Day, if I'm not mistaken. Yes, Business Day newspaper. Let's read this. Now remember, Special Cemetery, Benue State. We're coming to that. This is where they buried my husband and brothers killed by murderous herdsmen this year. And the Okada man's response is grim, dark, to say the least. Sorry, madam. The place is looking abandoned already. I think the governor should renovate it and name it after the president. Do you get the reference here? You get the reference? So over the week we had we had the FCT minister. I almost called him FCT governor. The FCT minister presents to the president another monument, a facility that was renamed in honor of the president.
Right.
The ICC Center is now the Bola Ahmed Tinubu International Conference Center there in Abuja, and it was a very big pageantry when it came to the launching over the week. We saw Wike in his very interesting regalia and his backup singers. You know, it was huge. Many people, however, ask how much of these monies that are being pumped into these facilities are being spent adequately. Is the ICC Center going to perhaps maybe help the poor man and his living conditions? What has it done for them? Why are we spending so much renovating these pieces of facilities that the common man doesn't even get to step into? Why not rechannel that money? These are arguments out there. You were going to say.
I was going to say that it puts the capital on the map, right? So when you think about international conferences that can be held in Nigeria, you know, you could think about places like Lagos for all of its international spots, hotels, and, you know, and also you can now think of Abuja. I guess that's why in terms of like tourism, if that makes any sense.
Yeah, I get you.
And so just to make a case for, at the risk of holding brief for your good friend and uncle, Wike.
My uncle.
You get what I mean? At the risk of holding brief for him. But I'd like to think that if you're changing an international conference center to make it more state-of-the-art, although that money that is used to refurbish the places is still in question, one would think that the reason why they're doing all of that is simply because they want to up it to state-of-the-art to increase.
So we get that. The argument is you must have these facilities. You need places to entertain your international guests. And if you have big events, of course, you need a state-of-the-art facility. But it was the pageantry that followed the launch. It was also the fact that it was renamed in Bola Ahmed's honor.
And what did I say about this yesterday?
In 2 years, I was actually looking for a full list of facilities that have been named after the president. In 2 years, there have been about 6 or 7 of these facilities that he has had his name pinned on. If I can get that real quick, I'll read out the list for you, but it's very difficult for me to find it here.
How many are we looking at on average?
6 of them, at least 6 of them, including polytechnics, tech centers, I think 1 or 2, I'm not too sure. I don't want to be quoted wrongly. So when I find them, I would read out that list. But that's the bone of contention. We're working with 6. Let's work with 6. That's the bone of contention. And in only 2 years, he's got 2 more years to go. Many will argue 6. How many more monuments will be named after him? If you remember my monologue from yesterday, it was all about Bola Tinubu this, Bola Tinubu that, you know, in Abuja. Is it going to stop and we're going to have that focus on maybe security, for instance?
Right.
There's also the opinion that these are just simple gifts to the president for the sake of self-preservation on the part of people who perhaps maybe want favor, you know. I'm getting the information that there's 7, not even 6. So it's even Bola Ahmed International Center is the latest one that has been added to the 6. Oh, there's one in Mina. There's one in Mina, by the way. There's one in Abuja. There's Bola Tinubu. What's it again? Building in the National Assembly. Thank you very much. Let's forget that one.
Renamed after him.
There's so many.
Technology of complex.
Thank you, Judith. Thank you there. So if we continue to name, maybe it'll be 11:05. So let's leave it. Let's take another one that Nigerians will relate to. Another strip this morning, and I think our next one is coming from the Guardian newspaper. This is about our Democracy Day celebration. Yay! Let's celebrate. 26 years of uninterrupted democracy is worth celebrating, isn't it? But of course, exactly. Jumbo salary, jumbo allowance, jumbo choppings. It's been 26 years of robust democracy. Exactly. And 26 years of robust cheeks. It was very interesting to see the president's speech at the National Assembly on Thursday. Many questioned whether it was for Democracy Day or whether it was Appreciation Day. Because it seemed, and like I said yesterday, after he reeled out all the honors, after he reeled out all the work that his administration is doing, especially for the youth, sexy agriculture, nobody said a pip until he said, it is not my business if your house is in disarray, and in fact, I enjoy the fact that your houses are in disarray. Right. Speaking about the opposition.
Yeah, the
opposition. And then you saw everybody, hail, happy Monday. But nobody was concerned about the special facilities being rolled out for the youth. Nobody showed any enthusiasm regarding that. Now, this kind of like sums that up. This is the summation of Nigerian governance when it comes to how they see what they're doing or what their entitlements are as against what the people really need. Your take, Judith.
Well, I mean, you've put it very succinctly. There's really nothing to add to this one. 26 years of democracy just by name, but not really and honestly, truly by what the tenets are, in terms of democracy. The people are still, the hunger, there's a widening gap between the middle class and the rich and the poor.
Is there a middle class? There's no
middle class has now dwindled completely. Yeah. The dividends of democracy is not yet to be seen. And democracy being, for the people, by the people, it's, at this point, it's really just for one party at this point. Even though, I mean, on textbook, we are a multi-party system, but yeah, we are,
If we take it to that conversation, Judy, we won't leave it out.
Yeah,
go home.
see, man, let's
take our last one. Our last trip for this morning. Interesting. Yes, name it till you make it.
Oh, what did I just say?
This was to come after that.
What did I just say?
Name it till you make it. The map of Nigeria. Sorry. Tinuburia is what the Daily Trust. Abulama is very, very risky, but this
is a beautiful name, by the way.
These are the states. Thank you guys for sussing this one out. We had the Mina International Airport, which has been renamed Tinubu International Airport, the Federal Polytechnic, which is now Tinubu Polytechnic, the Southern Park, which is now Tinubu Way, Tinubu Building, National Assembly Library. Yes, remember that one. We told about that. Tinubu Barracks, Tinubu Technology Innovation Complex, and Tinubu International Conference Center. So you name it till you make it. You don't need to fake it.
I know,
just
that's
call
right.
it your name.
Oh, yeah. I know, that's right. Now, listen, yeah. To make it to a whole brief for the president, I hate that I'm doing this, but it's my job. I need to ask, okay, as well, just to the research team, how many other heads of states and leaders, presidents of Nigeria, have infrastructure or business buildings or roads named after them? So let's see if they're going 4 for 4, 3 for 3, or 7 for 7 at this point. And who holds the highest record? I'm intrigued.
No, he does. He does. Researched, he does. When it comes to
he does?
Yeah, indeed. It's a presidential record that's held by the president.
I would think it would be go on.
See, so there are arguments to that. We're talking about while in office. While in office. Gowon is, most of the facilities named after him was after he left, if you get me. But in any case, that's as much strips that we can take for today. I want to say thank you very much. Thank you for helping me analyze them.
Thank you for having me.
And to anybody out there who also wants us to talk about one or two during the week, you can send us a DM message to any of our social media platforms. Judith, I am not very pleased with you.
What did I do? I know we should have Father's Day.
Yeah, it is. It is Father's Day. And I'm a father, and I take pride in that. And you should have wished me Happy Father's Day today.
Well, you said, come again? What did you say?
You should have wished me Happy Father's Day.
Yeah, okay, fine, Marzino. Happy Father's Day
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Happy Father's Day to you.
On that note, we'll bring the show to an end. It's been a stellar weekend here on News Central, on Breakfast Extra. We'll expect you guys to join us again next week. Judith is going to tell you where you should be from Monday to Friday.
Oh, yeah, that's right. You want to keep your dial on here to News Central. We're on Go TV channel 23, and of course, we're on DSTV channel 274. Now, do remember that Monday to Friday, the breakfast team, the trio, they're back on. That's Benga, Olive, and Joe. They were going to have you all through from Monday down to Friday from 7 a.m. down to 10 a.m. It's going to be the very best. So, in-depth analysis of the biggest stories affecting our country.
Let's wrap this all up in a ribbon and present to you our very special Father's Day package for Father's Day. And happy Father's Day.
Happy Father's Day, Daddy. Absolutely love you.
Let's see this. Bye-bye, everybody.
One of the sweetest memories I have of my dad is whenever he's around, we usually have to enjoy extraordinary.
My dad is an amazing man and he is really caring.
My dad is an amazing man and he has his parenting style which I find adorable.
I think all dad are superheroes, but my dad is my favorite superhero.
One of my greatest lessons from my dad was to focus on results and ensure that my work
speaks for me. Growing up, my dad always said one thing, that no matter what happens outside, you can always call me. We would always find a solution to the situation. And that made me feel like there was always a home for me, no matter what happens outside.
One salient one that resonates with me till today is, he called me when I was quite younger and he told me, he said, one of the reasons why I don't misbehave or I don't have another woman here is because of you. I don't want you to have troubles. And that stuck with me even till today.
My dad would negotiate. I mean, we had discussions. We had a good time growing up. Although now he's getting older and at times he gets impatient, but he's still very loving and caring.
He always emphasized the importance of hard work and having results. And for me, I think that has stood with me, and that continues to guide how I live my life. I really love my dad, and I don't think I would have done this world properly without him. I don't even want to know what a world without him would be.
Now, as a parent myself, I am adopting some of his styles in the sense that I'm just observing my kids and I'll be growing with them, learning from their interest and not trying to force my own interest or direction on them. And I think this is an amazing thing I learned from my dad.
So today I appreciate his resilience. I